Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat. This is the podcast where the Northwest Missouri State University Career Services Office chats with Northwest faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends to hear about their career journeys, how they got to where they are, and how they became Bearcats. I'm Career Services Assistant Director Travis Klein.
And I'm Hannah Christian, the Director of Career Services here at Northwest. And today's guest on our show, my final drum roll of the year, is...
Hi, I'm Elise Hepworth. I am the new Dean for the College of Arts and Sciences.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, very excited to have you on Behind the Bearcat. So, as we like to start out, we'll just do the simplest way possible. Can you just start at the beginning and kind of talk through your career journey about how you got to Northwest, and then eventually kind of we'll end up at what does a dean do and what are you doing now as a dean? So take it away.
Sure, great. Well, it was a snowy day in March when I was born. No, just kidding. I am a proud alumni of Northwest Missouri State. I graduated in December of 2000 with my degree in music education, and that really kicked everything off and was really the impetus for where I am, what I'm doing right now, and where I am right now.
Why music education?
Why not? As a rural kid and growing up in Missouri, I didn't have a lot of exposure to career opportunities. I knew that there were general jobs that people went into. You could be a teacher, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, something that was really broad. And I, coming from a family of educators, thought I would like to be a kindergarten teacher, just like my mom and her sister and her other sister. We've got two aunts. We've got a lot of educators in the family. So I came to Northwest and started out as an ed major, and it didn't get very far because I realized that I was participating in a lot of music ensembles and organizations, and found that was the area that I thought, I think I'd like to be a music teacher. I think this would be the path that I would like to go down. And it took me by surprise because I didn't think about even music education as a career. But then as I got to know folks and got to experience some of my courses and got to discover some of my own talents, then I found that that was the right fit for me.
So then you graduated in December, which if you're going to be a music educator, seems like a strange time of year to graduate, but where did you go from there?
Oh, it was a strange time to graduate. And I remember my dad saying, "Oh, Elise, I don't know, are you going to be able to get a job?" And I thought, well, sure, why not? But being someone who was naive at the time, didn't realize that perhaps it was difficult to get a teaching job in the middle of an academic year. But I had several interviews. I landed my very first teaching job at Lawson High School, which is just north and slightly east of Kansas City, teaching 9/12 band and choir. So I had marching band, color guard, jazz band, show choir, concert choir, music appreciation, which was a lot in that first year. So I did land at a really good job. And then my second year, I ended up at Smithville High School, and where I taught 7/12 vocal music. I was only focusing on the vocal music education at that point. But I stayed there for a couple years too before moving on.
Okay, so teaching vocal music, right? Kind of in terms of making that decision did you teach again somewhere else, or did you hop back into grad school? Like what happened to kind of change your mind around, just being a vocal music teacher for like 35 years?
That's a good question. I can't tell you that I had any sort of direction. I think that when I saw opportunity, I'm a measured risk taker. So I think when things present themselves, that I might as well try it, especially if it's not going to do me or anyone else any harm. So I was teaching at Smithville and had encouragement from a friend to start a summer master's program, and I started a music education summer master's at University of Missouri, Kansas City Conservatory. Didn't realize that that was a difficult school to get into or a program. Showed up and they said, "Wow, you got to this program." I was like, "Oh, I'm just here. This is the reason reason why I came to the school is because it was close." And that my principal said that I could leave work at 2:15 instead of 2:35 every day to drive down to the UMKC campus to begin taking classes. So that was a great encouragement from a friend. Had no thoughts about that. Had a really wonderful experience attending the summer program, but also courses through the academic year. So I was earning my master's as I was teaching. And I had a really good faculty member there, Dr. Rebecca Sherburne, who's no longer there, but said to me, I think you could do this for a living. I think you could perform. I think you could be a college level professor. And I thought, oh, I'd never thought about that. I never saw myself in that way. I had still was from this just small rural town thinking I was great and very happy going into kindergarten, being a kindergarten teacher. And I just happened to cross paths with the right people at the right time and received that encouragement a little along the way.
So you finish your master's, you have this kind of inkling now. You were like PhD, Doctor of Music. What did you get?
I have a Doctor of Arts in vocal performance and vocal pedagogy, which is the science and the study of teaching. So that was really around what my terminal degrees surrounded the studies by. I happened to go to a conference and run into a former department chair at Northwest, and who was the new department chair at the University of Mississippi. And he says, "I've got a graduate teaching assistantship opening up. Would love for you to come down and audition." And that's how I ended up going to Ole Miss. I had thought about seeking more education. I really enjoy school. I enjoy being curious and learning more and enjoy collaborating and the aspect of being part of a team that a classroom can bring. And so I thought about perhaps going to University of Colorado in Boulder. I had looked at some other schools, but I hadn't planned on starting my degree journey until the fall of 2004. But this is the spring of 2003. They say, "We got an assistantship. Come on down. We will pay you to come to school." I flew down, and the minute I got there, I knew that's where I was supposed to be. It's the people, the experience. I remember calling my parents and saying, "I think I'm going to move to Mississippi." And most like everything, my dad's like, "Well, okay. Good luck. Do you think you could do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." So yeah, spent 3.5 years in Oxford, Mississippi, and just had a wonderful experience. Did some interdisciplinary work with the otolaryngologist out of Memphis, Tennessee, and it was just a blast. It was a wild ride. Still can't believe that it's all happened, and almost 20 years ago, too, which is even crazier.
I think some of the coolest things are, for anybody who might be listening as an adult learner who went back to school, the coolest thing about learning is that there are still opportunities. They might be small, they might be hard to find. There are opportunities to be paid to learn. Like that still exists, folks. So
It does.
do not lose hope if that's what you're excited about. Those opportunities are out there.
Yeah, and as someone who paid for my own way through school, that was a big consideration too, because my parents helped me a lot through undergrad, but I paid for my master's degree out of pocket, and which was very expensive, and then managed to be very judicious about how many loans I was able to take out to support myself. And this was 20 years ago, and I still ended up with quite a bit of student loans at that time. So but they're out there, and don't take out as few student loans as you possibly can. It's
Yep.
tempting to take out extra.
Don't do it. Don't do
Don't do
it.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so you graduate with your Doctor of Arts, and then I already get the theme. You're sort of like out in the world watching the opportunities, and you just kind of grab one and off you go with it. What happened next?
I did. While I was at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, I was kind of thinking about what do I want to do when I graduate with this degree. I think, do I want to go into the profession? Do I want to, what's the next route to your point? And came across let's see, I could call it a scholarship, but it was more of it was through Rotary International. Rotary International is a profession-based service organization that focuses on 6 areas of service, particularly when it relates to improving humanity and building peace. And they had this global scholars opportunity to send, because one of the biggest pieces about Rotary is they believe that understanding cultures and understanding one another will lead to greater understanding in the world. And it's a grassroots effort, which I love Rotary. I'm still Rotarian. And this opportunity came up where I applied for it and won a global scholarship that was $26,000 to go study abroad in a country that, if as long as you matched in terms of reciprocity, then you could go. And I applied to go study in New Zealand and was selected to study at the New Zealand School of Music in Wellington. Matched there and spent a year, 2007, the whole year, January all the way till almost December, in New Zealand singing and singing professionally and singing with the New Zealand Lyric Opera and studying and rubbing my eyes because I couldn't believe that the little farm kid from Hamilton, Missouri was in New Zealand, studying with famous musicians, and just never visualized myself in that type of place or in that type of way. So yeah, went to New Zealand. So totally random. And then got on a plane to come back to the States, and I met my husband on the flight coming back. And we've been married now for 15 years this July, and just started the job hunt. That's when the job hunt really took off. I taught preschool for a while that spring because I was unemployed and I couldn't move back in with my folks. I was 29 and they were not interested in having me there, and I don't blame them at all. And found some work for me to do teaching preschool, which I loved so much. And that was a whole other area I didn't expect to travel down. And just as one of my most fond memories is that year. That year I turned 30 and I was teaching in preschool 4-year-olds. It was fantastic. It
Again,
was,
though, here's the thing. Like, isn't that what you started out to do in the first place? And
yeah.
of course, this whole journey that's taken you to New Zealand and, to be able to study vocal pedagogy, and you still yet get to experience the preschool or kindergarten teacher experience. That's pretty
I-
great.
And the teaching, if you can teach preschool, you can teach anything. It is elementary teacher, I think, and that really solidified my deep appreciation and respect for our primary school teachers and those that are pre-prep, because you have to be so prescribed yet also so flexible at the same time. And it's an art. That is an art. Scope, sequence, pacing, all of that. If you want to watch good teaching, go to an elementary classroom and just watch, because it is magic. Some of the best teaching I've ever seen has come out of preschool and elementary school classrooms. So it was brilliant. Loved it. I was at St. Paul's Episcopal Day School in downtown Kansas City. That was where I landed for the time being, and I applied to any job, again, very naively, for jobs I wasn't qualified for. I just threw my name into whatever hat that I could. And this is during the recession of 2008. So this is right as I was entering the workforce. We had the recession of 2008. So I can empathize with our younger students or folks that are entering a workforce where, the market is not necessarily reliable or stable at the moment. I think it was something like 42 jobs, I remember. And this was also back in the olden days when you had to print off all of your materials and mail them in manila folders and get a copy of your transcripts and your information, and then your recommendation letters had to be sent. You had to print everything off. I spent so much money that year, and I didn't have that money to spend too. It was a really rough trying to put all those packet materials together, and landed a job in Wayne, Nebraska, which is where I spent 6 years after that as an assistant and associate professor of music, did vocal music and choral music at Wayne State. And I just loved it.
So talk about that transition from you taught high school and taught vocal music to high school students, then preschool, and then now you're teaching college students. And those are three very different audiences, I would think. So obviously teaching principles, exist throughout the spectrum, but going from preschool to college students, I would imagine was quite a shift.
It is, but people are people, and we all have the same needs, and we all have the same desires. And I think that there are more commonalities between that. We tend to think about children as being less than because they have less experience, but there are equals. And to be able to think about novice learners not being attached to age, but to your level of exposure to new materials. So I can be a novice learner in the German language, but that doesn't correlate with me being a 5-year-old. And we tend to treat intellectual development and physical development the same because there's a big correlation between that. But working with novice learners, my absolute jam, my absolute favorite thing to do. Love it so much. If somebody tells me they can't sing or they can't do something or they don't know how to do it, that is where my fire is and my reason, my why. So teaching preschool and teaching college they're very similar structures. They're very similar structures. Communication, respect, appreciation, nurturing, all of those things are present in both levels. You just use a different vocabulary.
I would leverage that into my hypothesis up of then administration question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's all people. You have to think about communicating. It's not just your knowledge base, it's not just the content, but it's how you deliver information, how you receive information, how you manage conflict or come to resolutions. It's how you sit at a table with everyone to gather disparate opinions and life experiences and feelings and be able to come to some sort of a conclusion that people feel ownership in. It is all of these things are so interconnected. And the fact that human beings love to compartmentalize and make them separate, I think we're just doing ourselves a disservice. It's all the same. It really is. I think about administration as just like conducting a choir. It's just like conducting a choir. It's providing guidance, but it's also providing agency. So you want individuals to be able to make good decisions based on the best information that they have. And that's my responsibility to provide that to them so that they feel successful. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's about the whole. It's about the team. It's about everyone in totality.
So what gave you this sort of inclination into like, maybe I might want to be an administrator?
I didn't have that. I honestly, as you probably gathered, most of the things I've kind of come onto, I was like, because that, I never grew up thinking I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to be a dean. Not ever once that has been a part of my thought process. But as I went to, after 6 years at Wayne State, went to Missouri Western in St. Joe, just south of us, and spent 10 years there, most of which, six I was as a faculty member and had earned a full professorship and had always been inclined to be in areas of servant leadership. I always felt like if I was going to ask folks to do things, then I needed to be a model for that, or I needed to help provide support and provide direction and guidance. I've always felt like that is, I'm a firstborn, so I think that's probably also just in my nature in terms of family birth order. But I found myself in faculty leadership positions, committee leadership positions, and then as faculty senate president. And faculty senate president happened in 2019 to 2020. So, and we know what happened in March of 2020. So leading our faculty through that and being a voice and an advocate for them while also negotiating at the table with our administrators to come to a consensus or something that is good for students and good for the university and good for faculty. That was also the time where our institution had declared a financial emergency and we had to go through significant amount of reduction of faculty and staff. And that challenged me in a way that it is really hard to articulate. I think that I didn't really know who I was until I went through that. I didn't really know I didn't know who I was. I guess I just will leave it at that. You know, you really discover in trying times, like what kind of person you are. Are you somebody that runs toward crisis and wants to help, or do you run away? And I'm definitely a run toward type of person, to my own detriment often. But after that, there was a vacancy in this administrative position at Missouri Western, and they had a call for faculty to apply. And so I think I was one of 15 or 20 applicants for that position and was offered that position, I think in part because of my ability to keep a calm demeanor, to communicate, to be a conduit for advocacy, just as a lifelong learner. I think later on when I found out the other people who had applied, I was amazed because I had held those individuals in such high esteem. I couldn't believe that I was selected because just their type of leadership was admirable and something that I wish to emulate. So being in that kind of administrative position then broadened my scope, and it helped me see, wow, I can make such a bigger impact, a more lasting impact on a broader audience if I kind of serve in this capacity. And again, it was very much like directing music. You're planning and you're communicating and you're providing equitable experiences and opportunities, and you're setting people up for an environment that is healthy and has a good sense of morale. And I thought, wow, this is what I was meant to do. And I don't even want to call myself a leader. I feel like I'm the person that does the work so that the people can do the work to support the students. And I love it. I love it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I love it.
I do think for someone who doesn't really understand what someone in an administrative position does, a conductor of an orchestra is really a great sort of metaphor for that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you go, I was looking at the symphony brochure the other day, but if you go to the symphony, the conductor is the least important person on the stage, right? I mean, but also the most, right? The symphony looks to them for direction, but when you're looking at that as a whole, I mean, they're often not really that noticeable to the person who's looking at the symphony.
If it's done correctly, they're not drawing attention to themselves. However, they are accountable for that symphony. So if the symphony does a poor job, they're responsible and they take responsibility for that. So that's exactly like administration. When things don't go well, and they inevitably don't go well because we're working with human beings in an environment that's just constantly changing, and you're constantly navigating and solving problems and trying to mediate and advocate. But if things do go wrong, then I'm accountable, and I believe in taking responsibility for that. It's never passing it on to someone else or saying, well, that person, I don't know why they did that or whatever. It's like, no, this is on me.
I think accountability, sometimes people seem afraid of accountability, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you actually take accountability is when I feel like when you can actually make some
yep.
impact, right? The accountability is tied to that ability to have an impact. You can't have impact without accountability, I
It's
guess.
and its accountability doesn't mean that you're a bad person. If you're afraid of accountability, it doesn't feel good sometimes when things go wrong and you have to say, wow, yeah, I really stepped to that one. That did not go the way that I'd hoped. It didn't go the way that I planned. But to admit that and to apologize and to move forward also helps build your trust among the people who you are asking to
Also be
allow them to
accountable.
guide you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will always be the first to admit if I've made a mistake and be the first to correct. And
I
I'm
think
definitely not a perfect person by any stretch of the means. Oh my gosh. Like
Well, and we want to
it's
stay accountable
unbelievable.
too. We know
yeah,
you have a
I
10:30
love
meeting to go
that.
to, so we want to make sure you're not late
Great
for that.
segue. Great
We're
segue.
we're very excited to have you at
Okay.
Northwest and as one of our new deans. So yes, very excited to
Well,
see what the future holds for all of us.
yeah,
So
I am just so thrilled. And thank you for inviting me today. I really want to get to know people better and more across the institution. And I'm so incredibly proud to be a student, to be an alum of the school, and to now have some of it in my own care. It's such a precious responsibility. And I'm deeply appreciative too. And I'm also big fans of yours. So.
Thank you.
excellent. Well, thank you so much, and that'll do it for this season of Behind the Bearcat. And we'll talk to you next time.